You have theft, assault, arson, murder, growing out his sideburns. It just keeps getting worse and worse. Wow, you were victimized. That's terrible. You should let me cleanse you with my penis. Hello. Do you like to get pissed off? Do you enjoy feeling angry? Oh boy, do I have some book recommendations for you. My initial concept was for this to be religious horror themed. However, what I found upon reading all of these is that they made me irrationally angry. At worst, you are actively rooting against the protagonist, and at best, you are so frustrated with them that also just fills you with just this mighty fury within. So, if you're into that, then this is the video for you. First up, this is a pretty new release. It's called Music to Sacrifice Virgins To by Kristopher Triana. We have our main character, Asher, who, spoiler, we do not like Asher. We do not root for Asher. Spoiler, not really. But he's our main character. You don't know that you dislike him right off the bat. He just seems kind of like a regular dude who's down on his luck. He had this long-term relationship that came to an end, and he has to move out from their shared abode. And he ends up moving back home with his mother. And also he lost his job, so he's having to try to seek work out at the same time. He's just feeling like a big fat loser. He finds out that apparently his Uncle Rex died and left him this huge record collection of like heavy death metal. Which was kind of weird because I'm pretty sure it said that he had literally never met the man, or if he did, he was like super young or something. But his uncle and his mother were estranged. And so it's not like Uncle Rex was in his life at birthday parties and all that. In the beginning, you just know that there is some bad blood there. She doesn't want her son Asher to have anything to do with anything related to Rex. But Asher don't give a flying fuck what his mom wants. And, so he goes and collects these records. And he's not really into this super heavy music or anything, but he's kind of trying to like it, thinking at the very least maybe he could sell it and make some money, which he could certainly use right now, right? The catalyst for everything else that happens in the book. Because basically, one of the albums that is in this record collection is called Music to Sacrifice Virgins To. It turns out that particular record has the ability to influence the people listening to it in what I would argue is an extremely negative way. But it's one of those things, you know how it is, where the thing that's so alluring about evil, terrible things is that it doesn't feel bad, at least not at first. Right? Like usually you get kind of like seduced into the dark side. Being selfish can be addictive because it makes you feel like you're in control and it makes you feel powerful that you're putting yourself first and you're demanding others put you first. Especially for people who don't have a healthy relationship with themselves and maybe never put themselves first. And so the opportunity for evil influences comes along and it's like they overcorrect. It's like they've been stifling themselves for so long that they're just chomping at the bit to finally feel that kind of sense of empowerment, and also I think it's a sense of agency in themselves to be able to make those decisions. When you put other people first as a choice, it often makes you feel good. It feels charitable. It feels like you're contributing to like your community or to your family or, whatever the situation is. When you are coerced into putting others first, it builds resentment. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's certainly no shortage of powerful, evil people in literature and in the real world. But I think that there is also an appeal to it for people who feel like they've just kind of been shit on by life. And for people who feel like they're always getting the short end of the stick and they just sort of hit that breaking point where even though it's evil, they just don't care anymore. They're just so sick and tired of being the loser. And even if they're, making a deal with the devil, they just want to win. And they convince themselves that they don't care. So when Asher starts listening to this album, it becomes very clear that this has a supernatural, like the devil, demon, hellish influence. So this man is exposed to the opportunity to pursue evil for selfish intent and to basically worship the devil. But he's pretty happy and eager to jump on board with that. And the entire rest of the book is just this insane escalation. How evil can he be? How messed up can he be? And keep trying to up the ante. The man basically kind of creates his own cult to worship Satan. And so throughout the rest of the book, you are seeing this man pursue the absolute depths of depravity. You are seeing the people in his life, the young neighbor girl that he seduces into his little cult, the best friend that he had. We're not going to talk about Diego, but he has a friend Diego. We're not going to talk about it. Ooh, there's people in his life that already knew him when he was fucking normal, when he was just like a chill dude. His mother, Diego's cousin, gets wrapped up. The girl who is next door, her family members, all these people are getting wrapped up in Asher's world and being manipulated, abused, mistreated, coerced. And he is reveling in it because he's just continuing to get more and more powerful. And this book, like, it's good. It's good. Don't misunderstand me. It's well written. It's Kristopher Triana. It's well written. It's effective. It's good. But I hate this man. I am filled with hatred. This man is the worst. And the entire time, all I wanted, like reading this man being the worst, specifically and particularly towards women in general. We talked about him having this kind of cult thingy. There is a supernatural element to this where he is actually being imbued with certain powers as he's proving himself to the devil or whatever. So it allows him the ability to seduce people and to influence them into doing what he wants them to do. So you have this terrible, terrible man who has these women in his life where if he can't just yell, scream, beat, manipulate, coerce, then he just uses his little spell to get them to do whatever he wants. And so there is a lot of smut in this book. This man treats these women like sex slaves, and because of his powers and whatnot, the scenes sometimes, often, come across as technically consensual, but not really, because it's only as a result of abuse, manipulation, coercion, supernatural elements. I'm not mad about it. It makes sense. Like, if you had this man who is giving in to the influence of evil for selfish gain, it would not be surprising that one of the first things he would want to do is have a bunch of women hypnotized into doing whatever weird sex shit that he wants, right? Like that wouldn't be that surprising to hear, so it makes sense. It gets more and more nasty as you get throughout the book because it starts, all the normal stuff he was doing starts to get boring, so he wants to keep upping the ante by being more and more terrible to them. Despite the abundance of smut in this book, it's not like like, ooh, sexy. It felt more in line with reading a woman getting beaten than it did with like a sexy scene. You know, like it's happening. It's written in a way that's like kind of consensual, like the women might seem excited or happy about what's happening, but again, it's not real and we know that. And so like oh just it was so hard to read sometimes because he's getting away with it. Like there's no repercussions for him choosing evil. Like it's just his life from his perspective just keeps getting better and better. Everyone else's life around him is getting worse and worse, but his life is getting better and better. There's no repercussions, there's no punishment, nothing bad is happening to him as you're going through the book. When I did my Kristopher Triana author focus video, I was sick. Now, coincidentally, as soon as I started reading this, I got sick again, and I'm better now. But there's a point in this book, because Asher is, being a big baddie and all of that, he's gained enough powers that he is starting to affect his environment in negative ways. For example, the milk in the refrigerator keeps spoiling just because it's near him, I guess. And so I'm not blaming Kristopher Triana, but what I'm saying is that perhaps I am the human equivalent of milk. And I spoil every time I try to read his books because they're evil. It's a theory. When you think about kind of the terrible, terrible ways that Asher treats women in the story after he becomes a big baddie or whatever, and so much baggage because when he was a nice guy, his relationship ended. Clearly, if he was nice and his girlfriend left him, it must have been because he was too nice. That's the only possible reason. Surely Asher was perfect, other than being too nice, but because he was just like too much of a great guy, that was the problem. Surely it wasn't any of his other many flaws that I'm sure he possesses. Anyway, I do appreciate that Kristopher Triana, by the way that it is framed within the book, the way he's treating these women, it's the sort of thing that this narrative of like women need to be bossed around a little bit to keep them in line, and you have to kind of put them down, otherwise they get a big head. You have to control them because they're too stupid to make good decisions for themselves. Like that kind of attitude is unfortunately something that you sometimes see associated with God, and you sometimes see associated with like good values. Sometimes you see that sort of rhetoric being spread by people who are claiming to be religious. And so I do appreciate Kristopher Triana making the clear implication that that treatment is more in line with evil than it is with good. There's a lot in this book, I think, specifically about when you really get to the darkest parts of common male fantasies. I'm not somebody who's like, oh, adult films shouldn't exist. I'm not of that opinion. I do think that they are often harmless. That being said, sometimes they're not. And I think that when you see men specifically, they're not the only ones who watch it, but specifically when men watch too much of it, there's this desire to bring the fantasy into reality. When you're watching those films, it's like, I've said this before, it's like that's an actress. She's getting paid to react in a certain way for whatever they want for their film or whatever. Just because a woman acts like she's liking something in an adult film doesn't mean that the actress was actually liking it. I mean, she might have been. But she's an actress. She's going to act out the scene the way she's supposed to act out the scene that she's agreed to do. And so for men who get like a little bit too into that stuff, there's this expectation that their female partners, who are not actresses, who are actually just trying to have a real, genuinely nice time with you. And there's this expectation that they're gonna like whatever you want to do. And it's like, my guy, no. Like it's like kind of that dehumanization of people actually have their own opinions on things. And when you want those fantasies to be a part of your reality and you're expecting your real life partner to just sort of play their part instead of having genuine reactions to things, it's just sort of a recipe to build resentment. With that fantasy being put to its most extreme version, it's like, okay, well, if I have these powers, then I don't have to track down a woman who naturally actually likes this. I can just pick a woman I like and make her like it, make her go along with it. And it's it's uncomfortable to read. The book is good. It's a good book, but I hate it. I hated that he's getting away with it. No. Now, my one criticism of the actual book itself, there isn't a very specific scene that I'm like, oh, that one specifically shouldn't be in there, or anything like that. But in general, the smut scenes do, while I do see an intention of showing the how it's devolving into just getting more and more violent and sadistic in nature. I see that. But still, there's so many of these scenes in this book that it does start to feel a little bit redundant. The easiest way I can say it is that this is a long book. At the end, it did not leave me wanting more. At the end, I was ready for it to end. So, take that for what it's worth. But that does not take away from the fact it's an intense, well-written story, and if you like smut, you might react to it differently than I do. I mean, you might still think the smut is sexy. I don't know. But, for me, it didn't read that way. But yeah, I did enjoy it, even though I also hated it. Okay, next up. It's not getting better from here. So this one is called A Father of Lies by Brian Everson. I've never read this author before, but I would definitely be interested in reading him again, despite how infuriating this was. So we have Provost Fox, who is a dude who, doesn't seem to be doing really well. He's having nightmares and acting kind of not exactly sleepwalking, but sleep talking, and just stressed, acting a little off, right? And so he ends up going to see a therapist, Dr. Feshtig. Here's the thing. We got this religious provost guy, right? And so when he goes to see a therapist, he starts talking about his dreams. And his dreams are bad. His dreams are inappropriate and violent and disgusting thoughts and fantasies about children. And he is sharing this with the therapist. And so the therapist is like, yo, we should, really get to the core of this so we can knock this shit out, right? You find out, this isn't a spoiler. If you read the description, it's in there. So this isn't a spoiler. But you find out that hey, those things that Provost Fox told you happened in a dream, well, it's like some people are accusing him of things in real life. And so you come to find out that what has been described to the therapist as being parts of dreams could actually be acts that this man actually did and was just framing as a dream so that he could justify talking about it to the therapist without, being arrested and stuff. When it comes to light that there's certain accusations at play, you find out that the church is trying to get the therapist to divulge his notes and stuff because they're like, no, we want those. And it's not because they're like, oh, one of our guys is a baddie. We need to have proof so that we can do something about this. It's like, hey, this would look bad for the church, so we want to hide any evidence that the therapist might have that our guy is doing bad things. He's innocent. I talked to God about it, and God told me just to ask him. And I did, and he said he didn't do it, and I believe him. So give me them notes. And it's so... so you have this church overstepping, trying to take these notes from Dr. Feshtig. Now, obviously, Dr. Feshtig does not have proof of anything. These are just notes about this dude talking about a dream. But he is not planning on trying to give this stuff up to the church, because he's like, nah, this ain't for you. It becomes a drama in the sense of Dr. Feshtig trying to keep the separation of the church with what he's doing, and also having to come to terms with, like, did my client commit these acts? Should I have seen this was more than dreams? Am I partially responsible for not seeing that this was real? Like, how much of what he told me was real? And there's his whole thing. But more importantly, we have Provost Fox, who is the worst person who has ever lived. And in this book, it's not really so much like there's God being used as a ruse and an excuse. But really, if anything, we potentially maybe have some type of mental illness. Not that that justifies anything, because this guy knows. He knows it ain't right. He ain't right. He seems confused at times about certain things. At no point in time does this man seem to think that, like, this would be the morally correct thing for me to do. But what he does do is he uses his authority as a provost, as like this church guy, to manipulate other people into allowing him to do real nasty shit with them. And he's telling them, like, oh, oh my God, I don't want to spoil, but I want to give examples. There will be a person who comes to him looking for help. He's lying to these people, convincing them that him abusing them is him helping them. And he's like, I cannot imagine being a religious person who really truly believed in my book and in the power of the church and all of that, and to have a church leader person tell me what I know and feel to be wrong, what I have evidence in my book. My book tells me what's right and wrong, right? And I know that certain things are bad, but he's like, no. Ignore what you know, not just your feelings. Ignore what you know. Ignore basic common sense. Ignore instinct. Ignore everything. Because otherwise, you're going against God. And you're going to burn in hell unless you let me stick my dick in your... This made me angrier than the other one, actually. This is infuriating. I think largely because the thing with Music to Sacrifice Virgins too is that this is a dude who is very openly and proudly worshiping Satan, and whereas this is a man pretending to be pious, pretending to be good and wholesome and God-fearing, the hypocrisy of portraying himself to be a symbol of goodness and purity, and then using that to just abuse the shit out of people who look up to him, who are looking to him for direction. It's that abuse of authority. And And how you see that not just with the people who are going to him for help, but even just other members in the church who do see things that seem a little sketchy, but no, but the leader said that this is what we should do, and I need to trust the leadership within the church. This assumption that people deserve to be in the positions that they're in. And so therefore, you should respect their authority, you should listen to them. And it's like anything else. You got somebody on a power trip because he's getting away with it. Just like the last guy. There's no repercussion. Like, he's getting away with it. The church trying to protect the image of the church, trying to make it seem like no, this guy's chill. He's not chill. He's not chill. And so you hate him. You hate the church. You hate everyone and everything. So this was really good. I think it's just one of those things that this one did hit particularly hard because it's not based on a specific true story, but it's based on a true story, And I do think that for me personally, books that are based in reality as opposed to supernatural influences are the most effective horror. And so for this to just be a real person, again, possibly maybe mentally ill, but still just a person. There's a lot that you can get into. You can get into the idea of if someone is mentally ill, at what point is somebody still responsible for their behavior, even if they are mentally ill? Hypothetically, even if they couldn't really understand that what they were doing was wrong, it doesn't matter because they are so dangerous to society that they simply cannot be amongst us. You are rooting against your protagonist the entire time. You want him to fail. You want him to be caught. You're rooting for the therapist. You like the therapist. It sounds weird to say this, but to be honest, at times it's almost kind of funny. Like, there's this weird, light humor to certain parts of this because it's just so ridiculous. Like, it's just so ridiculous. And the fact that he's still, it's so transparent, it's so obvious, and yet it's somehow still gonna go away with it. Like, but I imagine this would probably be a very hard read for a lot of people who maybe have like baggage with like religious trauma. But that being said, it's good. I liked it, even though I hated it. Last up, this one is not anger inducing in the same way. Our main character is much more likable in comparison. This one is more frustrating. And this is Come Closer by Sara, Gran. Now, this is just about a normal lady named Amanda. And it's about basically her becoming possessed by a demon. Amanda's just a normal woman. She's married to a dude named Ed, and they're happy and everything's chill, right? But we start off right off the bat. Things are a little bit weird with some other parts of her life. For example, she is an architect, and at her office, she has a boss. We start off the story where she goes and hands in like a memo or a proposal or something, and it somehow becomes altered between when she cognizantly. From when she was aware that she was writing it, it changed. And so she put this thing on his desk that was filled with insults towards him on it, and she didn't realize that that's what she was giving him. And so it's right off the bat showing this thing of her not always being aware of what she's doing. It's not as if someone else in the office is pulling a prank or something like that. It is heavily implied that she did this but does not remember doing it. But that the insults in this memo or whatever are true to her actual feelings. She's able to go back and find the original proposal or whatever, and it's normal, and she just gives him that, and it's kind of chalked up as just this weird thing with no explanation, but definitely super weird, right? Also, her and Edward, in their apartment, there's this loud banging sound that just kind of comes and goes, and they can't really figure out where it's coming from. It's this weird thing where anytime they try to track down the sound, it sounds like it moves. And so it's just like, oh, the apartment's haunted. Like that's the kind of vibe you're getting. So you have these unexplained occurrences, but it's something that you would be annoyed and confused by, but it wouldn't necessarily put your entire life on hold. You know what I mean? Like you'd still be going about your day even though these weird things were happening. I suspect what the author was going for with this book is that you as the reader were left not sure if Amanda was possessed or becoming possessed or if she was mentally ill. Because in the beginning, her behavior, it seems to be like her own natural flaws or struggles are being exaggerated. So she used to smoke and then she quit and then she impulsively just starts smoking again out of nowhere for no reason. Her and Edward seem like they have a relatively healthy marriage, but like most marriages, it's not perfect. And so any little tidbits of annoyance or resentment become very exaggerated. And then all of a sudden, it's not just that Edward has certain quirks, like he's a bit of a neat freak and he has allergies and stuff like that. And she starts to view those things as more suffocating and infringing to her, where she can't just leave a piece of clothing out without him freaking out, and she feels controlled by his desire for cleanliness, and she starts to think that he exaggerates his allergies as a form of control. She starts to view the relationship as more stifling than she did before this kind of descent into. Her behavior continues to get stranger and stranger, but it's all things that you see happen to a real person in real life, like somebody quit smoking and then started smoking again. People having marriage issues. She starts becoming less attentive at her job. It's kind of like we were talking about with the first book, where the idea of giving in to doing whatever you want to do, giving into your whims, being impulsive, it makes you feel powerful and in control. It feels really good to put yourself first. I want to do this. I want to smoke. My husband doesn't want me to smoke in the house because he's a little bitch. I want to smoke in the house, so I'm just going to sit here and smoke in the house and he can fucking be miserable about it. I don't care. I've made all these compromises. I go without all these things and I'm sick and tired of it. I want to smoke in my own goddamn house. He can die mad about it. And it's like for her, it feels really good. Again, relatively normal, like, oh, someone's being inconsiderate. But then the stuff starts to become less normal. The possibility of demon possession is something that is presented to her through the form of a book that she had access to, but it is not something that she takes seriously. It is one of those quizzes where circle however many applies to you and then see which answer you get. It's like, oh, well, if you had between 4 to 5 marked yes, then you might be possessed. But if you had 8 or above, then you're definitely possessed. Like one of those quizzes. And so she has access to one of those that she, again, doesn't take seriously. But the thing that really triggers her becoming more concerned is that she is starting to lose chunks of time. She is starting to feel her body doing movements that she's not telling her body to do. Well, it starts off with her being annoyed at her husband, but then her arm, while she's smoking because she doesn't give a shit anymore, her arm just on its own, seemingly, just burns him. Just reaches out and burns him with a cigarette, which is something that does not make her feel good. And she didn't choose to do that. it's confusing and scary when she's losing large chunks of time and doesn't know what was going on during that time. And I think the thing for me personally, that the I'm not mad. I want to be clear. I'm not mad at any of these books for being the way that they are. I'm just mad in general. But it was so frustrating because the demon, to me, I read this as her being possessed. Might some people think she's mentally ill? Possibly, but to me, it doesn't read that way. But it's like, oh, he's asking me a question, and the demon w- won't let me respond. And that's the part that like really put it over the edge to me when it got to the point where not only is her body doing things against her will, but her ability to explain. Like she can't even say to her husband, I think I'm possessed. Like she's not able to say the words as the demon is growing stronger and stronger and gets to that point. It's what like this book was so frustrating because her responses don't seem unreasonable in the moment. Like in real life, who on earth is going to sit there and jump to the conclusion that they're possessed because there's a bump in the night and they're having marriage issues, you know? By the time that she actually starts to take it seriously, then it's too late. It made me feel sad. Like I wasn't really angry so much as I felt sad and frustrated with her because I think it's something where the idea of the demon preying on her, again, her flaws, her insecurities, her struggles, and the demon blaming her like, well, I'm only here because you wanted me to be here. You were enjoying this. You liked this. And it's the demon kind of telling her, well, you were mad at your husband. You liked burning him with this this escalation of behavior where something that starts with a little seed of truth that, yeah, it annoyed her that he had a stick up his butt about the smoking or whatever, but she still loved her husband. Like the love was still there. It's never presented as she doesn't love her husband. It's just something where when the demon takes over, she's picking apart all his flaws and doing all of this stuff. And then by the time her marriage starts to actively fall apart, she can't fix it because she's not in control anymore. And so I do think that there's a euphemism here for people struggling with their inner demons. It could be something like addiction or even just jealousy. These things that people struggle with, and it's part of being human, but when you let them in and you feed into them, by the time you realize how powerful they've become, it's too late. You're scrambling trying to repair the damage that's been done. You are not actively rooting against Amanda. You want Amanda to break free. You're rooting against the demon lady who's possessing her. But it is so frustrating. This one is so frustrating because it's just like, just use your words. She's so helpless. Her inner dialogue while all of this shit is happening around her, and she cannot do or say anything unless the demon gives her an inch, and usually she won't. So she's just sort of witnessing all of this stuff and unable to take any sort of agency to prevent it or to fix it or to explain. There's also, I think, too, a certain element of resignation, which again, I feel like that's a euphemism for all that other stuff too. It's just, at some point, you just sort of accept that your life is what it is and you stop trying to change it anymore. And so it's kind of depressing in that way. In summary, all of these are good, well-written stories. I liked and hated all of them. They all, in different ways, are going to play on the same kind of, not just religious horror, but all the things that kind of interconnect with that. The power dynamics and the abuse of power, the desire of belonging, how much of ourselves we're willing to hide or keep secret so that we can feel like we belong, the bastardization of everything that the church in theory is supposed to represent. Music to Sacrifice Virgins 2 is just action-packed, smut, death metal, all sort of nonsense. There's so much. Out of these three, Father of Lies is probably the one that's gonna that's probably the one that's gonna sit with me a little bit. I think again, particularly because it's more based in reality, in real things that I'm sure continue to happen and come closer. The closest out of the group to a more standard possession story. But when you think about a typical possession or exorcism type movie, a lot of times the horror elements are based off of the possessed person doing creepy poses and saying scary things, and that's where the horror comes from. Whereas Come Closer, the horror elements is this poor woman being trapped in her own head, being victimized and helpless, but to act out in this insane way. And the horror comes from, oh my God, how terrible would that be? It's like, it's much more emotional in its draw and much less about like theatrics, which I think allows it to resonate more. So despite my discomfort and fury and frustration, I had fun for the most part. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you the next time around. Bye! Could possibly be real things you see in adult films, but just also